What if, uh, what if the person sleeping next to you isn't just your partner, but your literal mechanical ticket out of the physical universe?
Right.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking the whole concept of, soulmates, and we are just ripping it entirely out of the romantic comedies.
Yeah, throwing her the heart-shaped balloons.
Exactly. Discarding the pop songs and replacing it exactly where ancient mystics said it actually belongs, which is it's a matter of absolute cosmic survival.
Yeah.
We're looking at a landscape today that is, quite honestly, it's totally mind-bending.
It really is. I mean, it completely reframes human connection. We're shifting away from this modern narrative of personal gratification,
Yeah.
like finding someone who just shares your hobbies or makes you feel comfortable.
Right, the whole swipe right culture.
Exactly. We're moving from that to a narrative of spiritual necessity. This isn't about finding a companion for a few decades on Earth. It's about finding the specific energetic key required to unlock your prison cell.
Man, that is heavy. And the sources we pulled together to explore this are just staggering. For you listening, we have a massive stack of ancient, deeply mystical Gnostic scriptures today.
Oh, yes. The Nag Hammadi Library.
Right, texts that were literally buried in the sands of Egypt in an earthenware jar for, nearly 2 millennia before being discovered by a peasant in 1945. So we're talking about the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary of Magdala, along with the Apocryphon of John and the Reality of the Rulers.
And these are texts that offer an entirely parallel, mystical version of early Christian thought, one that was honestly systematically suppressed.
Because it's dangerous, right?
Oh, profoundly dangerous to hierarchical structures. They don't teach obedience to an earthly church. They teach direct, unmediated, experiential knowledge of the divine, which is what the word Gnosis actually means.
Right, and we are pairing those ancient forbidden texts with the investigations of Rudolf Steiner.
A very interesting pairing.
Yeah, for those who might not know, Steiner was this profoundly influential esotericist and philosopher at the turn of the 20th century. He developed anthroposophy, which was essentially an attempt to apply the rigorous methodology of science to the spiritual realms.
He was incredibly methodical.
Yeah, and he claimed to be able to access the Akashic records, which is this sort of cosmic, energetic database of every thought, word, and action that has ever occurred.
It really is a fascinating pairing because you have, on one hand, ancient Egyptian desert mystics from the 2nd century, and on the other, an Austrian philosopher from the early 20th century.
Separated by nearly 2,000 years.
Exactly. Entirely different cultural contexts, yet they are pointing toward the exact same highly specific metaphysical reality regarding, the whole purpose of human relationships.
So our mission for you today is to decode these texts to answer 3 massive questions. First, are soulmates actually required to ascend back to the ultimate divine source, which these traditions call the monad?
A big question.
Huge. Second, if they are required, how does this union work mechanically? Like, what is the actual physics of 2 souls uniting? And third, why on earth was the universe designed this way in the first place? Like, why did we have to go through all this trouble?
Well, to properly set the stage, we really have to establish the backdrop of this cosmic perspective.
Okay.
In the Gnostic view and in Steiner's investigations, human encounters completely transcend mere biological chemistry or evolutionary mating drives. Today's journey requires you to just redefine love entirely.
So it's not just a nice feeling.
No, it is not an emotion you feel just to make your earthly life more pleasant. It is a sacred vocation. It's a vital, active component in the evolution of human consciousness. You are not just looking for a life partner, you are looking for a cosmic co-pilot to help you navigate your way out of the material matrix.
Wow. Okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why we supposedly need to unite with someone else just to get back to the divine source, we have to figure out why we are separated in the first place.
Right, the inciting incident.
Exactly. We have to look at the inciting incident of the entire universe. So let's look at the origin of death as separation. Where did it all go wrong?
Well, in the texts we're examining mortality, suffering, and the human condition itself, they are the direct mechanical results of an original cosmic separation. To the Gnostics, death isn't just a biological failing of the body, like cells deteriorating over time.
Right.
It is a symptom of a fundamental spiritual division.
And the Gospel of Philip hits this nail right on the head with just brutal clarity. There's this incredibly blunt line in Philip. It says, when Eve was in Adam, there was no death, But when she was separated from him, death came into being.
Yeah, the author of Philip is taking the traditional Genesis creation myth and looking at it through a completely multidimensional lens.
Because normally, Orthodox traditions interpret Eve being pulled from Adam's rib literally. Or they use it as a justification for social hierarchies.
Exactly. But in the Gnostic cosmology, Adam and Eve aren't just a historical man and woman. They represent the original state of humanity. The true spiritual human, the anthropos, was an androgynous, unified whole. It was entirely complete, lacking absolutely nothing.
Right, so male and female weren't two separate biological bodies walking around an earthly garden. They were perfectly integrated energies within a single divine blueprint. They were whole.
Correct. And that specific separation, the tearing of the feminine energetic principle out of the masculine energetic principle, that is what introduced the disease of mortality. The original perfect circuit was broken.
And we see this cosmic tragedy played out in really vivid details in another fascinating text from our stack, The Reality of the Rulers.
Also known as the hypostasis of the archons.
Yes, and this text is absolutely wild. It reads like a cosmic horror story mixed with high fantasy.
It really does.
It describes the creation of the physical human body, but not by a loving, omniscient Father God. Instead, the physical body is created by these ignorant, arrogant, parasitic rulers called the archons.
Led by a blind, megalomaniacal chief named Yaldabaoth.
Right, who has the face of a lion and a serpent. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Yaldabaoth is the demiurge. He's the false god who believes he is the ultimate creator because he is literally blind to the higher spiritual realms above him. And the archons are the builders of our material trap.
The text tells us they look up and see a reflection of the divine image, the true, perfect anthropos, shining in the cosmic waters. And like jealous children, they try to capture it. They take soil from the earth and model a physical, material atom.
But the text says their creation is a complete failure at first. They make the physical form, but he is just a powerless, flat, lifeless clump of matter.
He's a zombie.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
The text explicitly says he remained on the ground many days, and the archons couldn't make him rise because of their absolute powerlessness to create actual life. Matter, on its own, is dead.
So they're blowing on him, right? Like storm winds.
Yes, they blow on him trying to animate him, but nothing happens. He only has a soul at this point, which in the Gnostic, Platonic context means psyche. Just basic biological animation and instinct, much like an animal.
He breathes, his heart beats.
Right, but he has no pneuma, no true conscious divine spirit. He is essentially a biological automaton.
But then the text says the spirit saw this man of soul stranded on the ground. A voice came forth from incorruptibility for his assistance. And here is the crucial moment in the story.
The arrival of Eve.
Yes, the spiritual woman, the true spiritual Eve, comes to him. She isn't a physical body at this point. She's pure spiritual awakening. She speaks to him saying, "Rise, Adam." And when he opens his eyes and sees her, he says something incredibly profound. He says, "It is you who have given me life."
You will be called Mother of the Living, for she is my mother. She is the physician and the woman, and she has given birth. That is the direct quote from Adam. The physical male form is entirely asleep in the dense ignorance of the material world until the spiritual feminine principle, which represents divine wisdom, or Sophia, awakens him.
But the archons hate this. They realize this being now has a spiritual light that they don't possess, so they attack. The tragedy, the cosmic fracture, is that the archons force a division in this material realm. The rulers cause a deep sleep to fall on Adam.
And the text explicitly pauses to tell the reader that this deep sleep is ignorance.
Sleep equals spiritual amnesia.
Exactly. They open his side, they build up dense physical flesh in place of the spiritual woman, and suddenly Adam is left only with his lower physical soul. The true spiritual connection is severed, and Eve is trapped in a separate physical form.
It is the ultimate cosmic trauma. We experience this massive fall from a unified, enlightened, immortal state into a divided, ignorant, physical, dying state.
And to understand why this tragedy was allowed to happen on an even higher macrocosmic level, we have to look at the Apocryphon of John. This text gives us the prequel to the Archons. It's the story of Sophia.
Sophia being the divine afterthought, the ultimate emanation of wisdom from the absolute highest source, which the text called the invisible virgin spirit, or the monad.
Right. The monad, or the pleroma, which translates to the fullness, is this limitless ocean of conscious light. Within this fullness, divine energies exist in perfect pairs called syzygies.
Masculine and feminine balanced perfectly.
Precisely. But Sophia, the youngest of these emanations, made a grave mistake. She wanted to comprehend the unknowable depth of the Father, and she wanted to create something on her own, without her divine partner, without the syzygy.
She acted unilaterally. She tried to create outside the established harmony of the whole.
And because she acted without her partner, the result of her creation was flawed. It was a distortion, an energetic mutation. Her unilateral thought manifested as a monstrosity, the lion-faced, arrogant demiurge, Yaldabaoth.
Oh, wow. So she's his mother.
Yes, and Sophia is horrified by what she has made, so she casts him out of the pleroma into a realm of darkness. But Yaldabaoth steals a portion of her divine light, and with it he creates the archons and the entire physical universe as a flawed, dense copy of the spiritual realms.
And Sophia realizes the magnitude of her error. She repents with many tears. The texts describe her pacing in the darkness above the physical universe, agonizing over the divine light she accidentally trapped in matter. And she realizes she has to descend to restore what she lacked. She has to get that light back.
Which is where the Apocryphon of John connects this macrocosmic drama directly to our human longing for connection. It states, "For his partner will not come to him on his own, but he came to her through the realm of fullness so that he might restore what she lacked."
And then it makes the explicit connection to human relationships.
It does. It says, "For this reason a man will leave his father and his mother and will join himself to his wife, and the two of them will become one flesh, for his partner will be sent to him."
So every single time a human being feels that agonizing, undeniable longing for union, that feeling of missing a piece of yourself, it is a fractal echo of Sophia's cosmic longing to correct her original error of separation.
We are playing out the trauma of the universe on a microscopic, individual level.
Wait, stop right there. You're telling me the grand cosmic plan is just to suffer through earthly existence, deal with the archons, endure the trauma of separation, only to eventually reunite and end up exactly where we started. I have to push back on this. Is the ultimate goal of human existence really just to scramble back into the original undivided box?
I see where you're going with this.
Like, let me use a biological analogy. Think about a single cell. Biologically, cell division is the absolute engine of life. One cell divides into two, two into four, and that massive division creates complex organisms. It creates humans, it creates consciousness as we know it. Division is growth.
Right, in a physical sense.
But in this Gnostic spiritual cosmology, you're saying it's the exact opposite. The division of that perfect androgynous spiritual cell into separate male and female energies doesn't create life. It creates mortality. It creates ignorance. It traps us. Why would the monad bother fracturing in the first place if the goal is just to hit the undo button?
That is a phenomenal question, and it is the absolute crux of esoteric philosophy. Your biological analogy of cell division is actually a perfect way to visualize the inversion of reality.
How so?
Well, in the material world, the world built by the archons, division builds complexity. But in the spiritual world, division breaks the circuit. However, to answer your question, the return to the monad is emphatically not a simple regression. We are not just hitting the cosmic rewind button to erase the tape of human history.
Okay, then what is it?
Philosophically and theologically, the Gnostic goal is known as an ontological apokatastasis. Let's break those words down. Ontological refers to the fundamental nature of being. Apokatastasis means a complete restoration or reconstitution.
So a restoration of the divine image.
Yes, but with one critical, universe-altering difference.
Which is?
Self-awareness, consciousness. Think about the original state of unity in the pleroma. It was perfect, but it was untested. The original unified anthropos was ignorant of its own perfection because it had absolutely nothing to contrast it with. It didn't know what it was because it had never experienced what it wasn't.
I see.
By experiencing the separation, by plunging into the dark, dense, terrifying reality of the material world, the soul experiences the extreme lack of the divine. It experiences the heavy friction of earthly existence.
We are taking the raw data of human suffering, isolation, and duality, and compiling it into a completely new operating system.
Exactly. When those divided halves finally find each other across lifetimes, and when they consciously choose to do the grueling work of reunion despite all the temptations of the physical world, the love that is forged is infinitely higher and more robust than the original naive unity.
Because they earned it.
They return to the monad not as innocent emanations who never left home, but as conscious, victorious conquerors of the material illusion. They return knowing exactly what love is because they have known its absence.
Wow. And this explains why the path back to the monad requires making the divided halves whole again. You cannot return to the fullness as a fragment. You can only enter the perfect light as a complete, unified entity that has willfully chosen unity over division.
Exactly.
Okay, so if that is the fundamental mechanical requirement of the universe, that we have to find our missing pieces, synthesize our energies, and generate the conscious light needed to ascend, how in the world do we actually pull that off?
That is the practical challenge.
Right. Because we are down here on Earth. Our memories of the spiritual realms are completely wiped. We are dealing with traffic jams, taxes, email inboxes, and the general chaos of survival. How do we find the specific, precise souls we are meant to unite with in a world of 8 billion people?
Seems impossible.
It does. Which leads us right to the mechanics of memory and destiny. We are transitioning from the ancient papyrus of the Nag Hammadi Library to the incredibly detailed spiritual investigations of Rudolf Steiner, specifically looking at pre-incarnational pacts.
And Steiner's vast body of work provides a highly technical, almost cartographic map for the mechanics of this reunion. Much of anthroposophy focuses deeply on the periods between our lifetimes.
The space between.
Yes. Steiner argued that human existence is a continuous rhythm of breathing in earthly experience and breathing out into the spiritual cosmos. When we die, we shed the physical body. Then, over a period of time, we shed the etheric body, which is our life force, and eventually we reside in the astral realm, stripped of our earthly egos and the physical brain.
And what happens there?
Well, in these higher spiritual regions, what Steiner sometimes referred to as Kamaloka, the soul world, and Devachan, the spirit land, we have full access to the vast memories of our multiple past lives.
We aren't blinded by the deep sleep of the archons anymore. We see the whole tapestry.
Yeah.
And it is in this space, this vibrant bardo state between lives, that Steiner claims we act as architects for our next incarnation. We make conscious agreements. We forge literal pacts with the souls we are meant to unite with.
And we must emphasize, these are souls we have known before. These pacts aren't random blind date assignments handed down by some cosmic human resources department.
Right.
They are forged between consciousnesses that have loved each other, fought with each other, and worked together through dozens, perhaps hundreds of incarnations. Steiner describes these meetings in the spirit land as completely transcendent. There are no vocal cords, no spoken words. The communication is a direct, unmediated transmission of thought, feeling, and intention from one soul's essence to another. It is pure truth.
I imagine them looking at each other, totally outside the constraints of earthly time and space, and essentially making a vow. I will meet you again in the density. No matter what physical forms we take, no matter what families we were born into, no matter what earthly obstacles are thrown in our way, we promise to find each other.
A sacred promise.
But it's not just about meeting up to hang out and have a nice life. They agree to do shared work that serves the greater evolution of the cosmos. They are planning their next collaborative mission behind enemy lines.
They are outlining a curriculum for their mutual growth. However, as you rightly pointed out, once we plunge back into the density of matter, the trauma of physical birth, and the necessary development of the human ego, completely obscure our conscious memories of Devachan.
The amnesia kicks in.
The physical brain is not equipped to hold the memories of the spirit land. We forget the pact, we forget the mission, we forget the vow.
It's like two secret agents going deep undercover. You get your memory entirely wiped so you can blend in with the locals, but you know deep in your subconscious that you have a rendezvous point with your partner. So, to ensure they actually manage to find each other when the time is right, Steiner says these souls agree on markers before they incarnate.
Think of markers as encrypted spiritual breadcrumbs. Because the conscious, rational memory is wiped clean, the souls rely on symbols and sensations that bypass the intellect entirely and strike directly at the etheric and astral layers of our being.
What does that actually look like in practice? How do markers manifest down here?
A marker could be a shared dream symbol. For example, two people living on opposite sides of the world might both have a recurring, hyper-specific dream of a certain geometric shape or strange landscape since they were children. When they finally meet and describe it, the recognition triggers the deep soul memory.
That's incredible.
A marker could also be a mathematically improbable sequence of synchronistic events. The universe bends to force the meeting. You miss your usual train by 3 seconds, you take an alternate route, you spill your coffee at the exact moment someone else drops their bag, you reach for the same napkins, and there it is.
The classic meet cute but cosmic.
Exactly. But the most common and perhaps most powerful marker Steiner references is a physiological, visceral quality of sensation when eyes meet for the first time. It is an undeniable resonance. It bypasses logic. The intellect might say, this person is entirely wrong for me on paper, but the soul screams, oh, there you are.
It's the physical feeling of ancient recognition. But we really need to clarify something crucial here, because this is where a lot of modern spirituality gets it wrong. Steiner radically redefines what a soulmate actually is.
Hmm.
He departs entirely from the popular romantic idea of the perfect other half completing a deficiency.
Oh, absolutely. The whole "you complete me" narrative is actually quite damaging. That movie trope implies that you are a broken, insufficient half-person limping around the earth looking for a patch to make you whole. That is a state of dependency, not spiritual
Yeah.
power.
Right.
In Steiner's view, soulmates, especially those meant for high-level cosmic work, are two complete, fully realized individual consciousnesses. They have done enough individual evolutionary work to stand on their own. They do not need each other to exist or to function in the world.
They are whole entities.
But when they come together, they create an exponential amplification. Each brings highly developed, unique spiritual gifts, and when united, they create a third, energetic entity that is entirely greater than the sum of its parts.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I picture this dynamic, like two legendary solo musicians agreeing before they are born to form a massive supergroup. Let's use Jimmy Page and Robert Plant as an analogy.
I like this.
Neither of them needs the other to play incredible music. They are brilliant, complete artists on their own. Jimmy Page can shred the guitar alone all day. But the specific harmony, the unique alchemy they create together when they form Led Zeppelin is a totally new, incredibly powerful entity that alters the landscape of music.
Yes.
They agreed in the spirit land to make that specific music together. But wait, this raises a terrifying possibility. What happens if one musician misses their cue? What if one person is too distracted by the noise of earthly life, caught up in the illusion of the material world, maybe they're obsessed with money, or trapped in a toxic situation out of fear, and they completely ignore the markers? What happens to the supergroup?
Well, you are identifying the profound tension at the heart of esoteric philosophy, which is the undeniable reality of human free will. Steiner is absolutely clear on this point. These pre-incarnational pacts are not rigid deterministic predestination.
So it's not locked in.
No, the universe is not a clockwork machine where you are forced down a specific path. The script is not locked. The pact is a sacred intention. It is a deeply held vow, but it absolutely must be enacted through the free, conscious choices of both individuals once they are operating within the density of Earth.
So you can fail. You can literally walk right past your soulmate, ignore the profound feeling in your gut, and miss the rendezvous.
Yes. The Archons have built a very convincing, very comfortable matrix. There is always the profound risk that one or both people will choose fear over love. The soulmate connection, by its very nature, demands intense, terrifying growth. It destroys the comfortable ego.
Which people hate.
Exactly. Many people, when confronted with the overwhelming intensity of that connection, will flinch. They will choose the security of an easy, conventional life over the transformative fire of the soulmate pact. They choose the known comfort of their limitations over the unknown terror of their potential. And when that happens, when the pact is broken or ignored through free will, Steiner explains that it creates a specific energetic density called missed opportunity karma.
Missed opportunity karma. That sounds incredibly heavy. How does that affect the souls mechanically?
It creates a kink in the cosmic evolutionary hose. The specific spiritual work, the specific light that was supposed to be generated by their union for the benefit of the universe, is delayed. That unfulfilled potential carries a profound magnetic weight in the astral realm.
So it haunts them.
It acts like a gravitational pull that will carry over into the next lifetime, subtly haunting both individuals, until a new opportunity can be orchestrated to try again. Fulfilling the pact requires active, conscious, and sometimes agonizingly difficult work. It is never guaranteed just because you set up the markers and felt the spark. You have to actively choose to honor the pact, to do the work every single day.
Which provides the perfect transition to the realities of what happens when we do make the choice. Let's say you follow the markers. You meet, your eyes lock, the synchronicities fire off like crazy, and you realize beyond a shadow of a doubt that you found the person you made the pact with. You say yes to the mission.
The beginning of the real work.
Exactly, because here is the secret they don't tell you in the romance novels. It isn't a permanent fairy tale from that moment on. In fact, that is the exact moment the real grueling work begins. We are entering the crucible of the connection.
The romantic comedy usually rolls the credits at the meeting or the wedding, implying that happily ever after is a static state of bliss. In the spiritual cosmology, the meeting is merely stepping up to the starting block of a marathon.
That's a long race.
Very long. Steiner, drawing on his deep understanding of human psychology and spiritual anatomy, outlines very distinct phases of the soulmate journey once they locate each other on Earth.
It usually starts with what we call recognition and enchantment. That's the magical, intoxicating phase where everything flows effortlessly. You finish each other's sentences, you feel completely known on a cellular level, and the possibilities for the future seem limitless.
That phase is a profound grace, but it is temporary by design.
It's just a taste.
Right. The universe grants that initial explosion of harmonious energy to forge a bond, a psychic superglue, strong enough to withstand the next, much more difficult phase. The shadow confrontation.
The shadow confrontation. This is the crucible. The agreement you made before you were born in the spirit land requires radical honesty and mutual vulnerability to function. All the masks you wear for society, all the clever ego defenses you've built up since childhood to protect yourself, they all have to drop. And when they drop, the Jungian shadow comes out to play.
In many of these profound multi-incarnational connections, there is significant negative karma from past lives that the souls explicitly agreed to heal in this lifetime. We are talking about deep wounds, betrayals, abandonment, cruelty, misuse of power.
The heavy stuff.
The heaviest. The pact they made wasn't just to be happy together and have a pleasant time. The pact was to deliberately recreate the exact emotional conditions of those past traumas so that this time around, fully conscious, they can choose different, more loving responses.
It is intensive, interactive healing. If you abandoned them in a past life or if they betrayed you, the primal fear of that trauma will surge up in this life, often triggered by something incredibly mundane. And you have to do the work to stay in the room. You have to offer genuine forgiveness and understanding rather than retreating into your ego or seeking revenge.
Exactly. And this intensive psychological work, mapped out by Steiner, connects directly, mechanically, back to the ancient Gnostic texts we discussed, specifically the incredibly powerful Gospel of Mary of Magdala.
Let's get into that.
This text provides the exact metaphysical blueprint for what is actually happening in the unseen realms during the shadow confrontation.
The Gospel of Mary is a breathtaking text. It details a visionary experience where Mary describes the soul's ascent back toward the ultimate light. But the path is blocked. The soul has to ascend past these wicked, parasitic cosmic entities called the powers of wrath.
In the Gnostic cosmology, the soul must ascend through the various planetary spheres, which are controlled by the archons. At each sphere, an archon, a power, tries to interrogate the soul, stop its progress, and drag it back down into the dense material illusion.
Like a cosmic toll booth.
Exactly. The text lists 7 distinct forms of the fourth power of wrath. They are darkness, desire, ignorance, zeal for death, the realm of the flesh, the foolish wisdom of the flesh, and the wisdom of the wrathful person.
Let's look closely at some of those. The foolish wisdom of the flesh essentially needs materialism, right? The stubborn, arrogant belief that only physical matter is real, that there is no spiritual dimension, and that the highest goal is just physical survival and comfort.
Precisely. It is the wisdom of the ego, which is foolishness to the spirit. These 7 powers act like cosmic customs agents. They interrogate the ascending soul, they demand to know where it is going, and they try to bind it with accusations of guilt and unworthiness.
So they weaponize your own shame.
They do. Let's focus closely on the encounter with the third power, which the text explicitly calls ignorance. Ignorance examines the soul aggressively and says, "Where are you going? You are bound by wickedness. Indeed, you are bound. Do not judge."
Wow. And the soul, having done its spiritual work, replies with absolute crystalline clarity. It says, "Why do you judge me? Since I have not passed judgment. I have been bound, but I have not bound anything. They did not recognize me, but I have recognized that the universe is to be dissolved."
Why do you judge me since I have not passed judgment? That line is staggering. The soul overcomes the archon of ignorance not by fighting it with weapons, but by entirely refusing to participate in the act of judgment.
Because the act of judgment belongs entirely to the lower archontic world of the flesh. To judge another person is to act according to the laws of Yaldabaoth.
Think about the mechanics of judgment. When you judge someone, you are trying to categorize them, dominate them, and lock them into a static material identity. You are focusing exclusively on their flaws, their past mistakes, and their ego, rather than acknowledging the divine, infinite spark of the monad within them. Judgment is the ultimate act of separation.
Okay, let's connect the dots here, because this is the mind-blowing part. The soulmate relationship is the literal, practical training ground for this cosmic ascent. Think about an argument with your partner. When your partner's shadow is heavily triggered, when they're acting out of deep fear or past trauma or insecurity and they lash out at you, the immediate egoic temptation is to judge them,
To fight back.
to condemn them,
Yeah.
to pull away, build a wall, and label them as bad or wrong.
Mm.
But if, in the heat of that moment, you practice unconditional love, if you practice radical forgiveness, look past the temporary ego flare-up, and refuse to judge them, you are actively, mechanically defeating the archon of ignorance in real time. You're defeating the archons of desire and wrath right there in your living room.
The domestic space, the intimate space of the relationship, literally becomes the cosmic battlefield. Every single time you choose compassion over judgment, vulnerability over defensiveness with your soulmate, you are slaying the powers that keep humanity trapped in the cycle of reincarnation. You are breaking the chains of the matrix.
I look at the shadow confrontation phase like a high-intensity spiritual gym. You literally cannot build the specific energetic muscle required to ascend to the monad without incredibly heavy resistance. You need the heavy weights to tear the muscle so it grows back stronger.
It's the only way to build strength.
And here's the truth. You simply cannot get that level of intense probing resistance sitting alone in a quiet room meditating on a mountaintop. It's too easy to think you're enlightened when no one is bothering you. You absolutely need the intense, inescapable friction of another human being. Specifically, the one person who knows you better than anyone else, triggering your worst habits, your deepest fears, and your most stubborn blind spots.
That's where the real work happens.
But I have to ask why? Why design it this way? If the ultimate goal of the universe is to ascend to a realm of perfect peace, infinite light, and total unity, why design a system where our deepest, most sacred connections cause us the most profound earthly distress? Why does the road to heaven have to run straight through psychological hell?
We really must reframe our understanding of distress. The soulmate relationship is an intensive school of growth. It is not a vacation. The ego, the personality construct we build to survive in the material world, formed by childhood conditioning and societal expectations, is incredibly dense.
It's like armor.
The Gospel of Mary refers to the physical body and its egoic passions as corrupted garments. You cannot simply take off a corrupted garment with a polite request or a weekend retreat. It is grown into the skin. It has to be burned away. The friction of your ego violently clashing with your partner's ego, the deep distress of having your most hidden flaws mirrored flawlessly back to you by someone whose opinion matters more than anyone else's, is the exact necessary mechanism that strips away those corrupted garments. The distress is the alchemical fire that refines the lead into gold. It forces you to drop the illusion of who you think you are, preparing the soul for the ultimate divine realm where absolutely no ego can exist.
Okay, so we've survived the initial cosmic fracture. We've navigated the amnesia of birth and found each other using the pre-birth markers. And we've willingly walked through the fire of the shadow work, burning away the ego and refusing to judge each other, effectively defeating the archons.
A huge accomplishment.
Massive. But what happens next? How does all of this psychological work actually trigger a metaphysical ascension? We are now entering the mystery of the bridal chamber. This is where the mechanics of Gnosticism get incredibly specific, highly technical, and honestly breathtaking.
In the Gospel of Philip, which is perhaps the most profound text regarding Gnostic sacraments, we are introduced to what the author considers the absolute highest spiritual achievement. In this community, above the ritual of baptism, above the Eucharist, above the anointing of chrism, is a mystery called the bridal chamber. The text explicitly elevates it, calling it the Holy of the Holy Ones.
Philip literally says, baptism is the holy house, but the Holy of the Holy Ones is the bridal chamber. It is the ultimate mystery. But he isn't talking about a physical room in a church, is he?
No, the Gnostics were profoundly metaphorical. To understand the mechanics of the bridal chamber, we must look at the Gospel of Thomas. Thomas is a collection of 114 cryptic sayings of Jesus. Logion 22 is perhaps one of the most famous and philosophically dense sayings in the entire text.
What does it say?
The scene is set. Jesus sees infants being suckled by their mothers and says to his disciples, "These infants being suckled are like those who enter the kingdom." The disciples, thinking literally, ask if they should physically become as little children. And Jesus gives this incredibly complex, multi-layered answer.
He says, when you make the two one, and when you make the inside like the outside and the outside like the inside and the above like the below, and when you make the male and the female one and the same, so that the male not be male nor the female, then will you enter the kingdom.
It's a riddle.
It is. And we need to pause here for a modern listener, because making the male and female one sounds like a discussion on modern gender theory. But that's not what they were talking about in Alexandria 2,000 years ago, is it?
Not at all. We have to strip away our modern biological and sociological definitions. In Gnostic, Hermetic, and Platonic thought, male and female were psychological and energetic archetypes that existed within every single human psyche, regardless of physical anatomy.
Okay, so what did they represent?
The male principle represented the active, outgoing in intellect, rationality, and form. The female principle represented the receptive, intuitive wisdom, the soul, and the substance.
So when you make the two one, this is echoed again in Logian 106, which says, when you make the two one, you will become the sons of man. The text is demanding that we unify our fragmented psychology. The kingdom of the monad absolutely cannot be entered in a state of duality.
Exactly. The cosmic separation that occurred when Sophia fell, the separation of Adam and Eve by the archons, all of it must be completely mathematically reversed. The active intellect and the receptive wisdom must be synthesized back into a single, unified spiritual engine.
And the Gospel of Philip reveals exactly how this synthesis functions metaphysically within the context of the soulmate union. It is a stunning revelation. Philip teaches that earthly, physical marriage between two people is merely an image, a lower dimensional reflection of the archetypal cosmic bridal chamber, which is the pleroma itself.
But when two souls successfully unite in the spiritual bridal chamber, meaning they have survived the shadow work, they have achieved radical naked honesty, and they love each other's essence unconditionally, they don't just feel happy, they generate an actual energetic substance. They put on what Philip calls the perfect light.
The perfect light.
Let me quote Philip directly here because the exact wording is vital to understanding the mechanics. Those who put on the perfect light, the powers do not see them and they are not able to restrain them. But one will put on the light in mystery in the union.
So what does this actually mean in practice? Like, how does this work?
It means that true, unclouded spiritual union between two souls generates a highly specific, elevated frequency of light. And this light physically blinds the archons.
It is literally a sci-fi cloaking device. Let's think about how a cloaking device works in a movie. It bends light around a ship so the enemy radar can't detect it. You're telling me that by achieving true, profound, egoless spiritual union with your soulmate, the two of you generate an energetic force field, a perfect light that makes you completely invisible to the cosmic coal collectors. You just walk right past the guards of the material universe.
Think of it in terms of radio frequencies and bandwidth. The archons, the parasitic rulers of the material matrix, operate entirely on a low-frequency bandwidth. The sensory apparatus is tuned to fear, lust, shame, judgment, and anger. That is the energy they feed on.
The lower vibes.
Exactly. When you and your partner are fighting, judging each other, and operating out of ego, you are broadcasting loud and clear on AM radio. The archons can see you perfectly, and they can manipulate you.
But when you're in the spiritual bridal chamber,
You have purged those lower frequencies through the shadow work. You are now resonating at the exact frequency of the monad, which is pure, unified, unconditional love. You have shifted to a high-definition satellite frequency. The archons literally lack the spiritual hardware to tune into your frequency. They cannot perceive love. Therefore, you disappear from their radar entirely.
you become a ghost in the machine. You become invisible to the matrix.
They transcend its laws entirely. The union in the bridal chamber permanently ends the separation that causes death. Remember the very first quote from Philip we discussed? When Eve was separated from Adam, death came into being. By truly reuniting the fractured energies, you conquer the mechanism of death.
That's incredible.
It is the exact mathematical reversal of the original cosmic fracture. It generates the necessary escape velocity, allowing the newly united entity to ascend past the planetary spheres, past the blind archons, and return to the monad. In the breathtaking words of the trimorphic Protanoia, another beautiful Nag Hammadi text, the soul finally receives the seals from the light, strips off the heavy garments of ignorance, and becomes a light in light.
A light in light. It is an incredibly beautiful, triumphant image. But honestly, it also sounds like a tremendous, crushing amount of pressure to put on one single romantic relationship. Which brings us to a crucial expansion of this concept. Because if everything relies on finding your one single true love and perfectly executing the shadow work without failing, then frankly, most of humanity is completely doomed. The math doesn't work out. But that's not what Steiner or the broader esoteric traditions are actually saying, are they?
Not at all. And it is deeply important that we revisit Steiner here to completely shatter the toxic modern myth of the one true love. Steiner's Akashic investigations offer a highly liberating and infinitely more complex concept of the cosmic web. You do not have just one single soulmate in the universe.
Thank goodness. Because the pressure of the one ruins so many good relationships.
It creates a mindset of scarcity and panic. Through the vast, sweeping journey of human evolution across hundreds or thousands of lifetimes, we form deep, abiding spiritual connections with a multitude of souls. And the pre-incarnational pacts we make with them in the spirit land take many, many different forms.
Right. A soulmate pact doesn't have to be a romantic marriage. You could have a profound soulmate pact with someone who becomes your business partner, and together you build something that changes society. It could be a powerful creative collaborator. Think of Lennon and McCartney. It could be a mentoring relationship, a specific teacher who appears in your life at the exact moment your soul needs a course correction. It could even be a brief, incredibly intense encounter. A stranger who pulls you out of a burning car, or someone you have a deep 3-hour conversation with on an airplane during a crisis, and then you part ways forever. That, too, is a pact.
Steiner strongly emphasizes flexibility and duration. We have this deeply ingrained, socially conditioned expectation that a successful relationship must last until one of the people dies. But from a higher spiritual perspective, a soulmate pact might only be meant to last 6 months.
Just a season.
Right. It might exist solely to fulfill one specific evolutionary purpose, to trigger a necessary awakening, to help you heal a specific childhood wound, or to catalyze a massive geographical or career change. Once that specific energetic work is complete, the purpose of the pact is fulfilled and the relationship naturally dissolves.
Recognizing that mechanic is so profoundly protective. It protects us from staying in toxic or dead-end attachments simply because we felt an explosive soulmate connection at the beginning. If the work you agreed to do is done, you can release the relationship with immense gratitude instead of suffering in agony because it didn't match the Disney forever fantasy.
Precisely. And understanding this allows you to honor multiple sacred covenants simultaneously in your life. You might be married to one soulmate, collaborating on a massive humanitarian project with a second soulmate, and receiving profound spiritual mentorship from a third. Each connection is sacred. Each connection fulfills a different pre-incarnational promise, and each connection contributes a different frequency of light to your overall ascension.
But how does all this individual ascension affect the rest of the universe? If you and your network of soulmates successfully put on the perfect light and ascend out of the matrix, what about everybody else? Fulfilling a soulmate pact isn't just a private, isolated escape pod, is it? It creates ripples.
Profound, universe-altering ripples. The fulfillment of a single pact benefits the entire interconnected network of the human collective. Steiner notes that conscious union between two people serves as an actual portal through which spiritual forces can work in the world.
Like a beacon.
When two people are sitting in their living room, engaging in radical honesty, offering profound forgiveness, and practicing unconditional love despite the ego's screams, they are doing more than saving themselves. They are acting as lightning rods. They are anchoring higher dimensional monadic light into the dense material plane of Earth. They are literally raising the baseline vibration of the collective unconscious.
And we see this collective, world-saving impact prophesied in the Gnostic reality of the rulers as well. The text doesn't just talk about individual escape. It speaks of a collective body called the Children of the Light. It prophesies a specific time in cosmic history when they will truly know the truth, when they will finally free themselves from the bondage of the Archon's error.
The text provides a vision of the endgame. It says, "Then they will ascend into the limitless light where this offspring belongs. Then the authorities will relinquish their ages, and their angels will weep over their destruction, and their demons will lament their death."
Wow.
The ultimate liberation of the individual is intimately, inextricably tied to the complete dissolution of the entire archonic control system. When enough light is generated, the matrix simply collapses from lack of low-frequency power.
I picture this entire process not as a simple two-piece jigsaw puzzle where two lovers click together and float away on a cloud.
Yeah.
I picture it as a massive, multi-dimensional, infinite fiber optic web covering the globe.
That's a great image.
If every soulmate union, romantic, platonic, or creative, is a physical connection made, then each time two people fulfill their pact, each time they do the agonizing shadow work and generate that perfect light of forgiveness, a whole new sector of the cosmic grid lights up. It pulses with brilliant energy.
It does.
But it brings up one final logistical question. Does that mean we all have to find all of our mates and light up our specific sectors before the whole system can ascend? Is humanity entirely dependent on every single person waking up?
Synthesizing the vast scope of Steiner's anthroposophy with the ancient Gnostic revelations, we see that the evolution of human consciousness is fundamentally a collective, interdependent journey. While the individual union in the bridal chamber provides the cloaking device for your personal ascension, your actions are not isolated.
Goes teamwork.
Every single honored pact, every time you remember the markers, every single instance of radical honesty and unconditional love you practice on Earth weakens the Archon's grip on the entire matrix. The light is contagious. Your personal contribution, the brave fulfillment of your specific pacts with your unique network of soulmates, is your specific vital offering to the supreme destiny of humanity. By healing your fragment of the universe, you are actively participating in returning the entire fractured cosmos back to the perfect fullness of the monad.
That is a staggering, monumental responsibility, but it is also incredibly empowering. It gives meaning to every interaction. Let's summarize the massive journey we've just taken. We started at the very beginning of the universe with the cosmic tragedy of the fracture, how Sophia's error led to the Archons, and how the tearing of the original unified spiritual entity into separate male and female forms created the disease of death and trapped us in the material illusion.
We then learned how to map our way back to each other in the dark. We explored Steiner's insights into the spirit land, the pre-incarnational pacts we forged between lives, and the encrypted markers, dreams, and synchronicities we leave behind to help our amnesiac earthly selves recognize our companions.
We walked bravely through the crucible, surviving the grueling shadow work where we have to drop our egoic masks and practice radical, terrifying forgiveness. And by refusing to judge our partners, we learned the mechanics of defeating the archons of ignorance and wrath that feed on our division.
And finally, we stepped into the ultimate mystery of the Gnostic bridal chamber, where synthesizing the active and receptive energies allows the soul to put on the perfect frequency of light, effectively cloaking itself from the rulers of the material world and returning to the source as light in light.
And we expanded that view to realize we aren't just looking for one person, we have multiple soulmates. And honoring these varied pacts lights up the cosmic web, contributing to the ultimate collapse of the Matrix and the liberation of all humanity.
Exactly.
So speaking directly to you, the listener,
Yeah.
take a moment today and think about the profound, unexplainable, gravity-heavy connections in your own life. Think about that intense friendship that changed your trajectory, that incredible creative partnership where ideas just flowed like magic, or that deeply challenging, friction-filled romance that forced you to grow up.
What if that connection isn't just a random coincidence of geography, biology, or timing?
Right. What if it is a sacred covenant, a binding promise you explicitly agreed to before you were even born into this body? Look for the markers in your life. Be brave enough to drop your carefully constructed masks. Lean into the terror of the shadow work, practice the radical forgiveness that starves the archons, and do the shared cosmic work you came here to do.
And to leave you with one final, truly mind-expanding concept to ponder as you look at the people in your life, we must look to a hidden detail from the trimorphic protonoia.
What's the detail?
In this text, the ultimate divine source, the monad itself, speaks directly. And it describes its own nature as an entirely androgynous, perfect, self-contained mother-father. It says, I copulate with myself and with those who love me.
That is profound.
If the ultimate monad is a totally unified, completely self-contained source of infinite love, and if, as Steiner suggests, this exact divine spark of love has always resided in the deepest, most inaccessible center of your own being, what if the soulmate you've been desperately seeking across all these painful lifetimes isn't really another person at all?
What if they are simply a divine mirror, a perfectly polished reflection, strategically placed in your path, triggering your deepest shadow and reflecting your highest light, purely to help you realize that you were never actually separated from the monad to begin with?
A mirror designed to reflect your own inherent, unbroken unity.
Suddenly, all our frantic searching looks completely different. You aren't trying to find a missing piece to fix a broken machine anymore. You're just learning how to finally open your eyes and see the brilliant, perfect light that was inside you all along.